Hi guys, I'm Laura Cooks Books, and today I want to talk about something a little bit controversial, and that is Snakegate and the whole controversy surrounding Nagini and the Fantastic Beasts film that's coming out very soon. Before we start, I want to think about what Harry Potter is to me, so you can see that this criticism is valid and coming from a real fan of Harry Potter, and not that I'm just some troll who's popped up to make some drama. One of my very earliest memories is of Harry Potter. It's of my dad reading me Chamber of Secrets. So it's been a part of my life for literally as long as I can remember. And when I got older, my dad got really sick, and that's when I first started to read the books for myself. I kind of had recently discovered Amazon, so I bought every book for myself and just got really immersed in it and lost myself to the story, and it was the escape that I needed, and I will never ever be able to thank JK Rowling enough for helping me with that, because that was a really difficult time for me. And I read them and reread them throughout the subsequent years, multiple times a year. One of my proudest achievements was actually reading them all 7 books in less than 7 days. And then I discovered fanfiction for Harry Potter, which led me to fanfiction and fandom as a whole, which was like a community I didn't know I had, people I had shared interests with, and it also gave me a platform to realise that I really like writing, and hey, maybe that's what I want to do with my life. The story will always be a part of me and my identity, and was inherently fundamental in forming my worldview and how I think we should treat other people. Having said all that, I don't owe JK Rowling unconditional support. As an adult and as a consumer, I believe I have the right to constructively criticise texts and authors, and I believe we all have that right. Especially if we love something as a child, because as we grow we start to be able to see flaws within it and start to question how that affected us. I'm not saying that Harry Potter is in any way inherently bad or evil, or that anyone who enjoyed those books is wrong, because I am one of those people. But I think it's time for me personally to reflect on my relationship with this franchise, because in my opinion some of the things that are being done are unconscionable. And yes, the Nagini issue has brought this to the forefront, but it is not the whole sole issue. What I want to talk about today is how JK Rowling has been retroactively progressive with her texts for quite some time now. When I say retroactively progressive, what do I mean? I'm talking about once a text has been out and in the world for a long time, the author then going back and saying, this character was a diverse character when there is no proof of that in the text, and that being very easy for a writer to do, to say, oh, I'd intended this all the while, without ever having to do the work, and therefore being praised as an ally and an activist without actually having done anything to deserve that praise. And I'm not saying there were no diverse characters in the original Harry Potter texts. I counted them and there's 9 people who are actually written as people of colour out of a cast of hundreds of characters. So obviously it wasn't ideal even at the time, but at least there was something that seemed to be the overriding opinion. However, since then, JK Rowling has tried to make the number of diverse characters in her book larger through various interviews and press releases, and through Pottermore and other expanded universe properties. So it all came to a head earlier this week when the Fantastic Beasts trailer was released, and a new Korean character who I was initially really excited about turned into a snake and was referred to as Nagini. And that yes, the Nagini that we saw in the Battle of Hogwarts was actually a Korean woman the whole time. Let me just clarify this now before I really get into this video. I am so happy that a Korean actress has been cast. I love Claudia Kim, and I've seen her in a lot of films, and I think she has a fantastic talent. What I'm mad about is that no one bothered to write her a character that was Korean from the point of conception. Instead, they've shoehorned a woman of colour into a role that is demeaning. So let's talk about the tea that went down this week. My friend Jen, who I've known since we were like 13, recently returned to Twitter and decided to tweet about what she saw as a very problematic issue. And she tweeted, at JK Rowling, listen Joanne, we get it, you didn't include enough representation when you wrote the books, but suddenly making Nagini into a Korean woman is garbage. Representation as an afterthought for more woke points is not good representation. And obviously, hundreds of people tweet JK Rowling every day. When we were younger, we tweeted JK Rowling every day because she was our idol. We never expected JK Rowling to reply, but she did. And this is the point where Jen popped into my inbox and was like, what is happening? So Rowling came back and responded, the Naga are snake-like mythical creatures of Indonesian mythology, hence the name Nagini. They are sometimes depicted as winged, sometimes half human, half snake. Indonesia comprises a few hundred ethnic groups, including Javanese, Chinese, and Betawi. Have a lovely day, snake. Yeah, JK Rowling called my friend a snake. And once we'd got over the initial shock of being seen by JK Rowling, I started to get really quite frustrated because I felt as though Jen's actual complaint hadn't been addressed. It was almost like Rowling was trying to divert attention away from the actual issue, which was retroactive diversity, by saying that Jen hadn't understood the mythology and given her like a copy and paste from Wikipedia style overview of the mythology that she'd chosen to write about. And then she also stuck around long enough to say thank you to the first person who said something nice underneath Jen's comment, like, oh, I love you, JK, and she's like, thanks, kid. So immediately Jen was framed as a villain from the outpoint of this, and I got really mad because JK Rowling has a precedent of, you know, burning people who try and criticise her in any way and then like blocking them, and that person tends to get a lot of hate, and I wasn't here for it, so I immediately decided to respond because I'm messy, and I asked a little bit more aggressively than, you know, I probably could have, at JK Rowling, at Jen Moulton. How did this address Jen's point in any way? You repeatedly try to retroactively shoehorn representations into your books which did not exist in the text, belittling the communities you're trying to take credit for championing, and we'd like to know why you think this is appropriate. Which I think is fair because this has been going on for a long time. Needless to say, she did not respond. Thousands of other very angry people did, however. And so the shitstorm began. Most people seemed to miss the point we were trying to make. So I'd like to kind of establish my personal issues with this whole drama. Number one, a person of colour was written as a circus performer by a white woman, which adheres to the literary tropes from like colonialist literature, and it also increases fetishization and exoticism of people of colour in literature and in films. Two, she is literally dehumanised into becoming an animal, and in the folklore, this usually happens against the woman's will. Three, she becomes a pet. A pet. Please let that sink in. Not only does she lose her humanity, she loses ownership of herself. And she doesn't just become a pet of anyone, she becomes a pet of Voldemort. The ultimate tyrant who is literally based on Hitler. This Korean woman loses her voice, her humanity, her autonomy, and becomes controlled by Hitler. And point four, she is then manipulated by Voldemort consistently throughout the books to murder and eat other people, further becoming dehumanised and becoming monstrous. And I don't think that's the best we can be doing as writers for women of colour in film and TV and literature at the minute. These points were all raised when some people who genuinely wanted to engage in a thoughtful debate came across me and Jen on Twitter, and it was really affirming to see that a lot of people were thinking about this in a deeper context. Obviously a lot of people weren't, and that's okay. I don't engage with trolls or people who are just there for the sake of being angry. A lot of people seem to take exception with the fact that I am white in this issue and that therefore I shouldn't be talking about it, which on some level I agree with. I think that I don't have the voice that is being oppressed in this situation, but I do have a very thorough education in writing and in literature, and I think that if we stand idly by whilst this happens to people of colour, then we are no better than the people who are writing this and making these decisions. I wasn't aiming to speak on behalf of anybody, and that was thankfully recognised by quite a few people of colour in the comments, but I just kind of want to get that out of the way as well. I by no means think I have a right to speak for these people. I think I have a right to criticise literature. One good point that was made on the opposing side was that the snake was always called Nagini, which is always a reference to the mythology that this is based on, which is true. Rowling could have had this mythology in her mind the whole time. Because she didn't write it, we can't prove that. And it also means that, you know, if there were any racist backlash at the time, she wouldn't get it. And now when we are in a more progressive society, she kind of skates through with the credit for that representation without ever having to face any difficulty in attaining it. The backlash I'm referring to seems to be the reason a lot of people are so easy to accept this trait of Rowling's and forgive it, and it comes up every time this retroactive diversity issue is raised, which is incredibly frequently. These excuses kind of include the fact that if diversity was included in the original books, JK Rowling would have suffered somehow. There would have been anger against the fact she'd included diverse characters from more conservative readers and the families of readers, because, you know, the parents are the ones making the decisions if children were allowed to read these books or not. Another thought was that it could therefore affect her book sales, and it could also create more challenges against the books in order to try and get them banned. But here's the thing. People boycotted Harry Potter because of witchcraft. People didn't buy the books. People challenge the books still to this day regularly. And that is with 9 diverse characters out of hundreds. So at the end of the day, the point that you're making is that including queer people and people of colour in your text will lose you money. And if you think that diversity is not worth the loss of finance, I have to call your morals into question. The thing that annoys me the most about this is that, in fact, if you include queer people and people of colour in your text, you're not narrowing your readership, you're expanding it, because you are affirming that these types of people can exist in this world you've created. That you've not created a fantasy world that is for whites only. You are creating a world in which, yes, gay characters can not only exist, but be successful and be happy. You are creating a world in which all ethnicities are represented and happy, and their culture is not bastardised in any way. Ilvermorny. You say to readers, anyone can exist inside this story. This is your story too. But as I said, Nagini is not the first example of this happening in the Potterverse. So let's take a trip down memory lane. Dumbledore is probably the ultimate and most easily recognisable example of retroactive diversity in the Harry Potter texts. In my opinion, you can't think of someone as a gay character. They are a gay character or they're not. Their gayness is not a quality which you can apply and then take away in different situations. It's an integral part of their personality. And I watched a video by Wayfaring Reader on this point, and he said that if you were really that worried about losing money in order to be an ally, why not just put one single sentence in the Deathly Hallows that would at least nod towards the confirmation of Dumbledore's sexuality? Because at that point, they've bought the book, you can't lose any more money. If you are really so worried about making homophobic readers feel comfortable and wanting their money that actively, why not just trick them? Be the better ally. She only revealed the fact that Dumbledore was gay when it was monetarily safe for her to do so, and in a way that did not directly affect the reading of the books in any way, because it wasn't done through literature, it was done through interviews. And then because it has become monetarily inconvenient for her again, because Dumbledore will be in a new Fantastic Beasts film as a young man with the man who was supposedly his lover, his gayness has been erased for this film, which is being confirmed by David Yates saying that he will not be explicitly gay in the film. So once again, Dumbledore has been forced back into the closet, which understandably a lot of queer readers and viewers are very upset by. But there is another level to Dumbledore's problematic gayness, according to JK Rowling. In an interview with the Leaky Cauldron, Rowling stated that because the great love of his life, Grindelwald, was no longer attainable for him, he had led a life of celibacy, again being a non-threatening gay. But that this celibacy meant that he was actually asexual. I don't know if you are particularly well versed on this issue in the asexual community, but conflating celibacy and asexuality is actually deeply insulting, and shows that you do not have a proper grip of the issues within the community, and I was about to say it makes you a bad ally, but it makes you no kind of ally at all. And honestly, I've never seen anyone try to hold her to account for this. I've never seen it addressed at all, and it is deeply upsetting. Moving on to Lupin. Lupin is a character that I have very strong feelings on. I absolutely adore Lupin. He's my favourite character. So the fact that JK Rowling tried to retroactively make him a symbol for something does quite upset me. Later on, when the books were published, she said that he was a metaphor for AIDS and HIV, which is a very, very sensitive topic for a lot of people, especially, again, the queer community, because they're the community who was predominantly affected by this disease. I am very aware that there are many other ways HIV and AIDS can be contracted, through breast milk, for example, through any kind of bodily fluids being touched. So not only gay men were affected by this, but it was predominantly gay men in the 80s who had to suffer through the effects of AIDS and HIV. And then to take that story out of the ownership of gay men and put it onto a character who was tried very hard to be made heterosexual through a relationship that, in my opinion, never really made much sense. That bothers me, and I feel like, and to be honest, it bothers me in more ways than I can currently put into words or frame. So I'm just going to move on. Moving on to Hermione. I was never excited about the concept of the cursed child, but the fact that they hired a black actress to play Hermione filled my heart with so much joy. I was like, you know, at least if this story is going to be trash, they're trying to improve it in other ways. Then JK Rowling said that if I'd known her being black would have made you this happy, I would have told you sooner, suggesting that the whole time, in her mind, as she was writing the books, Hermione had actually been black. And there are some stereotypical features that would suggest that Hermione was a black character throughout, which JK Rowling helpfully laid out for us in a tweet when she said, canon, brown eyes, frizzy hair, and very clever. White skin was never specified. Rowling loves a black Hermione. Fair enough. But white skin was specified. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Rowling writes, Hermione's white face was sticking out from behind a tree. And apparently there are more examples of this. This is the one that I could find while I was researching this video, but I've seen people say there are 3 or 4 instances of this in the texts. So therefore that is Rowling outrightly lying about the fact that she intended diversity throughout her books. And honestly, in my mind, my ultimate casting would be that Hermione would be a black woman and that Harry would be British Asian, because I think that makes far more sense to the story and adds more depth to the debates of racism that do exist within Harry Potter. So I would be so on board for a black Hermione you do not understand. But she just wasn't there, and I think it's unfair of JK Rowling to claim that she was. And this kind of claim that she was black the whole time also becomes problematic when you consider the Yule Ball, when all the things that were stereotypically black about Hermione, according to JK Rowling's tweet, were minimised in order for her to become beautiful. So with that curly brown hair, she was constantly belittled, made fun of, but the second it was sleek and straight, she was considered to be beautiful. So beautiful, in fact, that she wasn't instantly recognisable. Which I don't know about you, but it makes me feel very uncomfortable. So the question is, why is it important that we critique issues like this when we find them in TV, film and literature? In the media, it's vital that we critically appraise texts and also the people who create them, so that in the future we can learn from this practice and we can grow and we can create more diverse and better representation for more different types of people, so everyone can feel seen by the media. It also helps us craft better stories, and if someone As influential as JK Rowling to so many people is allowed to get away with this unquestioned, it definitely sets a precedent, and it allows writers to do the same and say, well, JK Rowling does it, and she's seen as one of the most progressive writers around. You as a consumer always have a right to critique the things you love and the authors you love. No one is saying Harry Potter is bad. I love it just as much as I always have. In fact, I have tickets to go to Harry Potter Studio Tour next month. I am not going to say that I am boycotting Harry Potter as a whole in any way, because I'm not. I just think this is something that is interesting and something we could have a debate about, and maybe something we could learn from. I get the feeling that a literary debate might not be what's going to happen. If I get any comments at all, I feel like they'll be very similar to the comments I received on Twitter. And I want to let you know that if you do want to have a constructive literary debate down below, I would absolutely love that, and it will be a safe space for that. You can express any opinion you'd like in that debate, and nobody, hopefully, is going to call you out for it. No one's going to be mean, because I feel like this is a community where we do engage in these kinds of debates quite a lot. Finally, I'd like to thank Jen for sparking this debate in some ways. She seemed to be the tweet that got picked up the most. She was trending on Twitter with the first tweet on the article and the moment about it. She got picked up by BBC News. Philip DeFranco put her in a video, Looper put her in a video, and yeah, I want to thank her for really pushing the debate and not giving in to the trolls, because she did a lot of really good work, and she actually made some good friends out of the debate that followed that tweet. And I think if it was me who had started this, I wouldn't have been able to cope with the backlash. She's been doing some amazing work over on Twitter to win over hearts and minds, and I just want to say thanks. I would also like to thank the authors of some truly astounding hate comments that we found after the dust had settled. They were a lot of fun to read, and I was honestly impressed. I'd like to end this video with what I feel is a very prescient quote from Albus Percival Wulfric, Brian Dumbledore himself. I feel like it's something that maybe JK Rowling needs to be reminded of as well. Dark times lie ahead of us, and there will be a time when we must choose between what is easy and what is right. See ya.